Welcome to Get Started with Case and Knowledge Management for HR Service Delivery. I'm Rue Adams. We'll do some introductions here momentarily. With me is Michael Sheridan. First, as we get started, safe harbor notice. We probably won't make any real forward-looking statements or roadmap statements today in this presentation, but we always pop up this slide to let you know that you should not be making purchasing decisions based on things that we may be planning and may or may not deliver. Although, as I always say, we're always trying to deliver the best experiences with our products for our customers, and we're always listening to our customers. That's actually part of my job. So with that, I'll move on to the Live on ServiceNow. This is a ServiceNow webinar. Live on ServiceNow does a number of events. We have several in the HR service delivery space upcoming this month, next month, and into the future. But there are just so many amazing webinars that are delivered on different applications and topics around ServiceNow through this Live on ServiceNow series. So definitely take a moment, look at what's available, and attend the ones that you have the most interest in. A few housekeeping items. There is a Q&A button on your screen. If you do have questions, we ask that you put them in the Q&A panel so that we can better manage them and answer them, respond to them for you. The presentation is being recorded. It will be shared on the ServiceNow community within a few days, a week of this broadcast. So please look at the ServiceNow community if you want to kind of come back and review any of the content that we cover today, or find other recordings that we've done in the recent past. Finally, after this event, you'll be prompted for a short survey. Please let us know how we're doing, what we can improve. Always looking for opportunities. So we always appreciate your feedback. And with that, I will move to the introductions. Again, I'm Rue Adams. I'm an outbound product manager in our employee workflows division, which includes HR service delivery as well as our workplace service delivery and legal service delivery products. I focus primarily on HRSD and HRSD related topics. And with me is Michael Sheridan. Michael, if you would take a moment to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Rue. So hello, everyone. I'm Mike Sheridan. I'm a product success technical director in our product success organization. I focus specifically on HR service delivery within our employee workflows business unit. I've been here at ServiceNow close to 8 years now, and my role is providing guidance, best practices as it relates to HR service delivery for customers and partners alike. So thanks for being here today. Back to you, Rue.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, so the agenda today, we'll do an overview of case and knowledge management. We'll talk about planning for your implementation. We'll talk about some configuration consideration. There will be a demo, some key takeaways at the end, and then we'll review some additional available resources. We'll also take any questions throughout the presentation, again, using that Q&A panel. And at the end, if there are any outstanding questions that we'd like to answer and or highlight, we'll do that at the end of the presentation. So case and knowledge management for HR service delivery, the whole point is to provide services, HR services, to our employees, right? So employees are engaging with us because they want to know something. They want to know how to do something. They want to complete simple tasks. They want to place orders. They want to ask their questions, and HR service delivery is a great way to manage all of that because, as we know, there are sometimes tens or hundreds of questions a day, depending on sort of what's going on in the employee life cycle. When they need help, we want to get them the help, and when they need care, we want to give them the care. So the whole purpose of HR service delivery is to sort of organize all of that into one place where you can properly manage it and understand what's going on with your business, and then take action based on that. So what we hope to do today is give you some basic information that will allow you to set up your HR service delivery. And if you've already set it up, maybe optimize it a little bit more so that your employees are getting the best service in the quickest time. So yeah, HR case and management. This is a platform. capability. And, IT uses a similar, uses the same knowledge base, uses a similar way of managing their IT tickets. But we're going to focus more on the HR side of it and how it allows you to standardize documentation, interaction, and fulfill employee requests for HR. So that will be our goal for today. This is kind of the life cycle at a high level, where an employee will maybe come to your employee portal. Maybe you have an employee center stood up, and they're engaging with whatever information you're providing there. They may be reading knowledge articles, engaging with some of the links that you've put up there. But oftentimes they're in that employee portal and they need something, right? They may be providing feedback on articles, or they may be opening cases. And so if an employee opens a case, sort of the third icon there, that case is going to get assigned to an agent. Now that may be into a queue and triaged and assigned manually, or it may be assigned through automated workforce. So, it depends on kind of how you've set that up, but an agent is going to get that case and they're going to start looking at that case. And when they do, if they're in the case management agent workspace, they'll probably find that there's knowledge articles or information about the case and the HR service related to their employee request, available to educate them as an agent in the best way, fastest way to resolve the employee inquiry or request. So we'll talk a little bit about agent workspace today, and then and give you some more insight into how that works. And then the agent is going to work that case, and they're going to update that case. Obviously, when the case is resolved, it gets reassigned to the employee for final acceptance. The employee will either confirm the resolution or maybe reopen the case. The agent will, again, work the case until it's finished, or they'll close the case. Once that case is closed, dashboards, reports, if you have performance analytics will show you what's happening with your cases. Which HR services are generating the most, which ones are taking the longest, what's the employee satisfaction with the case resolution. So you can get a lot of information, a lot of insight from our employee from our reports and dashboards. So this is kind of the flow of a case at a very high level. So yeah, so some benefits of HR case and knowledge management. So we obviously want to enhance our efficiency, both from the employee side, where employees can find information better and faster, but also from the agent side. So agents can more quickly close cases and get on to the next case, processing either the volumes that they have or spending more time working on those more complex cases. So we definitely want to, across the board, enhance the efficiency of the employee's engagement with the HR organization. We certainly want to create and share relevant information easily. Obviously, the better information we can provide to employees, the more complete that is, and the more actionable that information is, then the less time and effort on both the employee side as well as the agent side. We want to improve that service delivery experience, making it better and faster and more complete, so that we can have the best possible engagement between employees and HR. And then finally, which I think is a very important point, and Michael and I have talked about this on many occasions, protecting the employee privacy. Our security model is pretty advanced and in many ways can be done across multiple levels and layers to ensure that employees' privacy, their information is secure, that people who don't need to know don't know, people who need to know can find that information and help the employee in the most efficient and best way possible. So we definitely want to be able to protect the employee's privacy, regardless of the case they're opening and the HR service involved. So with that, we're going to launch a quick poll. We just kind of want to know where you're at on your HR implementation journey. Have you started? Have you bought licenses but you're not started? Are you thinking about it? Where are you kind of in the overall planning? This just gives us an idea about who's here, and we may tailor some of our statements and ideas here based on where you're at. And I see from the results we've got a lot of people in planning. So yeah, I think this session is probably really well suited for people who are planning or thinking about starting to hold their plans. And if you're doing workshops, which I see a few of you are, that's always great to know and think about what are we trying to do and what's the best way to move through an HR service delivery deployment. And if you're configuring, maybe a few of the tips today will help you sort of adjust your thinking or help you better understand the different ways you can influence how you're setting things up to be the most efficient and most complete. All right, well, thank you for that. That's great information to have. We'll try to hit on some of those points today that we think will help you regardless of where you are in your journey. So yeah, when you're planning for your implementation, there are some things you want to do to get more value faster. This is one of the things that we do. We have a checklist that's available. There will be some links published in the chat that you can look at that will get you to this information. Talk a little bit about what the checklist is, what the risks are, how to sort of set your foundation, and then what you can do as far as converting legacy knowledge into knowledge management on ServiceNow. I've run several of those projects. Oftentimes things are in a document repository somewhere. That repository may or may not be maintained. Oftentimes, it's probably another company's solution, and you're making the best use of it possible, but it's not necessarily a proactive solution that's going to give you long-term benefits. I've seen a lot of companies that have published information, published knowledge, made it available to their employees, and then never maintained it. So things are 3, 4, 5, or more years out of date. And that's not necessarily helpful to employees. Or if you're a multinational company, you may have everything sort of in one giant repository. And if I'm looking for information specific to the United States where I'm located, I may also be finding information for the UK, for the Philippines, for Australia, for Germany, and that's not necessarily helping me. And I have to sort through all that information to find out what applies to my situation as an employee. So definitely look through these resources, and there's some great guidance here for you. So when you talk about implementation approaches and how best to do this, we always want to start with our internal HR processes and understand what's happening. So even if you don't have a system of record, maybe all your cases are being opened through email. Maybe you've got one or more email aliases, and each HR service team is working through an inbox. You still want to look at what's happening in that inbox and get as much data out of that as you can. Which HR services or HR support requests are the highest volume, which ones may not be highest volume, but take the most time, things that you can definitely optimize, and things that you should then prioritize as you do an implementation, right? So if you get most of your questions are about different employee benefits, then you definitely want to prioritize the benefits information you're providing to your employees, and make sure that your knowledge articles are going to address the questions that are already being asked. You're definitely going to want to focus on employee experience and employee self-service. What are the things that employees can do themselves where the HR agent doesn't even need to be involved? Or the information, the employee can just be guided into maybe a system of record. Maybe you have third-party tools, and you just need to tell the employee how to log into that tool and do the work that they need to do to get the answers to their questions. So you definitely want to look at that employee experience and understand what is being asked and how best to get that done for employees. And then automating the critical and complex processes. It's amazing as I kind of work through with certain customers, how many customers have processes that they don't They don't document very well, and they don't think about the flow through the process from the inquiry from the employee all the way through the resolution and closing of the case. Oftentimes, there's a lot of back and forth between an HR agent and employee because the information isn't being captured up front. So, if you can get an employee to complete a very brief form about what they're asking, where they're located, and you have that information, you can often close that case much faster and in a much more complete way. So again, this is very high level, but we want to kind of ground you here and help you through. One of the resources that I'm highlighting now, and there's a link in the chat for this. This is our HR service delivery recommended implementation sequence. So we're really trying to get you to look at the base capabilities of HRSD and then grow as needed, as necessary over time into a more complete, more thorough HRSD solution, going all the way from sort of basic case management, knowledge management, security, all the way up to some of our current artificial intelligence products like Now Assist. So as you evolve and mature, this is a great roadmap, and this roadmap is available again through the link in chat. I definitely recommend you look at this and use it as general guidance. You may have specific needs that will tell you we want to do maybe everything in the left column and then a couple things from the right column is kind of our first release. But that's for you to choose. But we have a lot of capabilities and you can mature over time to really addressing a lot of your employees' needs and a lot of the efficiencies that your business needs. With that, I'm going to hand over to Michael to take you through the basics of HR case management. Michael, you're in presenter mode.
All right.
Still in presenter.
All right.
There you go. That's it.
All right, we got it. So welcome everyone. I see a few from familiar names on the attendees. So thank you for your attendance. We're going to talk a little bit about HR case management and really getting started and the important components of HR case management in terms of our implementation. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is HR profiles. It's a key element of what we're doing in HR case management. HR profiles are what are going to allow us to deliver the experience. And when I talk about delivering the experience, this is where we're going to store a lot of those key attributes that we're going to key in on to know that maybe somebody's a veteran, maybe somebody lives in the Midwest. So those type items that we're storing in the HR profile are going to allow us to deliver the experience, within the Employee Center Pro portal. HR profiles are a required element for HR case management. We typically get those HR profiles by way of an HCM integration. So the human capital management, our Workday, SuccessFactors, PeopleSoft, we typically integrate with, so we're automating those employees, new hires, alumni coming into the system, so they're maintained in the system of record and just fed into ServiceNow, updated in ServiceNow. So a key element of our HR case management. One thing to note is that when I create a case for a person that's in the user table, not in the HR profile, when I create a case for them as the open for or subject person, the system is going to automatically create that HR profile. So we would hope that it would already be created before we're creating the case, but by and large, that HR profile is going to be automatically created if the user is found and doesn't have an HR profile. So a key element in deploying HR. The next element I like to call the heartbeat or the heart of our HR service delivery, and that's our HR services. What are we offering? What services are we offering our employees, alumni, new hires to fulfill our HR service delivery within our HR services? And when I get into the demo, I'll show a bit some of the attributes that we apply with HR services, like case options, things of that nature, templates, so we could automate processes, we could build processes all through using that heart of our HR service delivery, which are the HR services. The next item that's required for foundation are our HR templates. And typically we're setting a priority on our HR case templates. We can designate assignment if we're not using auto assignment or advanced work assignment. There are other things that we could pre-populate, default fields, default priority, default status. But those HR case templates are a way that we could fulfill the request without having to have a manual input. We're just going to automate that through the HR case template. The next required for foundation element are record producers. So record producers are required if we're going to deliver our HR services from the HR catalog. So when we have a record producer specified for our HR service, it's going to allow us to show that within the portal. So we understand that some customers have HR services that are only created by agents, and we have HR services that are available in the portal for self-service, if you will. The next element is the security groups and roles. So we need groups and people to be in those groups in order to, establish our assignment groups. We need our roles to establish access within the application. I have a role of a HR basic, which gives me the ability to work HR cases. So if I'm a fulfiller, that's going to be a role that's appended to my profile. It's going to be needed in the application to deliver the services that we're looking for. And of course, the security. The security is coupled with the roles, but we also have elements like the COE security policies, where essentially we can configure an access restriction within any of our HR tables. And our HR tables we call centers of excellence, or we refer to them as COEs for those who are not familiar. The next required for foundation element are notifications. So we're going to want to get notified when our case is resolved. We're going to want to get notified perhaps when we're assigned a case. There's a lot of notifications in the system that help us to take action. So it's one of the elements that we deem necessary as a required foundation element. And then, of course, our out-of-box reports and dashboards. We're going to want to be able to deliver how we're meeting our metrics operationally. So we do that through our reports and dashboards. Some of the elements that we may want to add later in order to enhance our processes are fulfillment instructions. So we may have new agents that aren't really keen on how we work a specific HR service, or we may have nuances depending on, some criteria. So we can use fulfillment instructions so an agent would know what needs to happen in order to complete that HR case. We have things like checklists we can use to make sure, like fulfillment instructions, that we're following a process and we dot all our I's and cross all our T's, and we check all those boxes. SLAs, so are we going to have service level agreements against our HR cases because we're held responsible on meeting those SLAs? So typically we see these after the fact, after deployment, when a customer can fully evaluate, and set expectations. A lot of customers are setting SLAs on implementation. From day one, we want to assure that we're going to be able to meet our service targets. The next item we may want to add later are automated workflows and service activities. So we may want to build some processes, really expand and mature more in the application. So we're going to automate some of the things. So service activities, we may want to automate a non-disclosure agreement and have a service activity where we're presenting a non-disclosure agreement to an employee. And then next we have document templates. Document templates allow us to have documents for an employee to sign, have documents that would automatically attach to a case, maybe for reference purposes. So a lot of flexibility in our document templates. Certainly a way that you could build a process or refine a process by using those service activities that may include a document template of HR sort or document templates of more what we would call an advanced form. Surveys is also an element that you may want to add later. So we may want to get inputs on how we're providing the service from an employee perspective, or we may want to put out surveys to understand, from a manager's perspective, how is that onboarding experience since you're a new manager and it was a new process for you. And then lastly, the custom reports and dashboards. So we provide a plethora of out-of-box reports. It may be something you want to expand, be more specific in the metrics that you're trying to report to your leadership. So we'll talk a little bit about core data and HR profile. So really an element that's needed in order to have our HR services. The things to think about, are we integrating, excuse me, with a system of record? It's not typical that customers are importing HR profiles from a flat file like a spreadsheet. It's typical that customers are integrating with their HCM, so they have those system of records feeding in the latest updates. Do you need additional data in ServiceNow for the HR profile? So are we looking at things like employment start date, employment end date? For an HR profile, from a licensing perspective, that employment start date is going to allow you to maintain those HR profiles when somebody traverses from an employee to an alumni. And as we all know, the licensing structure within HR service delivery is an employee is licensed, a new hire or an alumni do not consume an HR service delivery employee license. So if we have 1,000 people that have left the company, we would hope that you would annotate that employment end date to where they would then be converted to an alumni, again, not consuming any of your employee licenses. So some of these are examples of the importance of specifying data within the employee profile, pulling over the right fields from our HCM to support our processes. We don't want to have somebody that's been gone from the company for 10 years still sitting in our HR profile table as an active employee. Again, we may have deactivated their network account, but in the system, we want to make sure that we're up to par. And does HR have any additional core data needs? So for HR to function, do we need any additional data? It may be a situation where we don't have a shipping address for that employee, and we want to be able to ship the new hire swag out to the employee, or ship a laptop from an IT perspective. So this could be a way that this information can be secured but shared where needed in order to facilitate a process. So again, my point being, trying to stress the importance of the HR profile and the as real time as we can get integration, typically, with those HCMs to feed the core data as it exists in our HCMs. So just a little more details on the HR services. So these are the benefits. These fall along with our centers of excellence to provide all of the services that we're providing in each of those centers of excellence data models. So we also, within the HR services, have templates to help you automate, set field values, as well as doing things like constructing a process by using service activities. Again, these are all done in our HR services. We can even do simple things like we have a function that we call case options, where I can automate workflows based on what we have out of box. And an example would be when I'm presenting a document to an employee, once the case is created, I want to automatically generate that document. I don't want the agent to have to go into the case, click a button to generate the document manually. So just an example on how we can automate services through a configuration through our HR service configuration. And I'll show a little bit more of that as we go through the demonstration in a little bit. So some of these sample HR services that you get, so roughly depending on if you're installed employee experience packs or if you're using lifecycle events, but by and large, you're going to have 54 sample HR services that you can certainly use for your processes. We like to call them best practice data. So when a customer says, well, what kind of services, do customers usually have? Those 54 HR services that we provide out of box are a good blueprint of what those services are. And certainly you can add, certainly you can deactivate or modify based on your use case. If not required, each out-of-box HR service can be deactivated individually. So if it's a matter of that we're not doing payroll in ServiceNow and we're not fielding payroll cases within ServiceNow, then we could deactivate those payroll HR services, or we could deactivate the payroll COE altogether within a configuration. Again, just to facilitate your processes, but keeping it as configuration driven, so facilitates upgrades. It's not a customization. So some of the considerations for defining and prioritizing HR services. The first is, what work is your HR team doing now and how is it managed? Are we using spreadsheets? Are we using Inbox? Other customers are using Outlook to do their HR services. What is the work that we're doing now? And how can we build that to give a better experience for all being the employee, the admin, as well as the agent. The second step is, how do employees initiate support with HR? Is it a call to a service desk? Is it an email? Is it some type of portal? So again, keep the experience in mind when you're trying to define and prioritize those HR services to give the best experience for all. The third, which process can easily be standardized? So can we build that just with an HR service? Do we need to extend it to service activities or do more automation through lifecycle events, Flow Designer, or any other method that we provide out of box? And then lastly, which services are important to your employees? So we want to make sure that we're providing a mechanism for our employees to request those services or get the help needed. Are we providing that as part of our HR service delivery? So one of the experiences that we're trying to deliver to an agent, we accommodate through our configurable HR agent workspace. HR agent workspace is an interface specific for HR agents that we've built to standardize how agents are viewing cases, how they're doing their work. The configurable HR agent workspace allows a little bit more flexibility as well. And I'll give an example here in my image on the screen. I have one case that's opened. I have another tab where I'm creating a new case. I could still open another case in another tab. So it allows me within the same window to toggle between cases. Before HR Agent Workspace, we saw a lot of agents were opening multiple browsers. So there are some cases where I would see 50 browser sessions open where an agent is working different cases. HR Agent Workspace facilitates that easier interface in order for me to toggle between cases without worrying about one of my browser sessions expiring and kind of muddying the waters. So some of the features of of the configurable HR agent workspace is it's an interactive overview of all my assigned cases and workloads. So I have lists, I have metrics, I have dashboards. I have reports that can be drilled into and filtered to access more detail. So I can conditionalize those reports to get to the details that I'm looking for. We have an intuitive search returning results from various sources. So part of our agent assist, I have search sources that I could set up. Are we searching knowledge? Are we searching closed cases? So again, putting more power in the hands of the agent so they can resolve cases more efficiently. And then we have links to announcements, quick links, and recently used applications. So just another way to give a better experience for the agent. So moving on to HR security. So we have a few different elements, one being the roles. You know, we have HR basic, we have roles that we give to an employee, we have roles that we give to an alumni. So just how we structure our role-based access within the application. We have groups. So we put people in groups to know who's available for assignment. We use groups for things like access restrictions to say this group can see it or this group can't. Client roles are really an extension of number one. Client roles are an automated way that we can say, well, when Mike joins the company on day one, he's going to go from a pre-hire or a new hire role to an employee role. And then when Mike retires, he's going to go from an employee to an alumni. That's what we call client roles. And we can tailor the experience to that client role based on if I'm an alumni, if I'm an employee, or if I'm a new hire. As a new hire, I would expect that I'm going to see different widgets, different content within those widgets than if I was an alumni. And then lastly, for security, we have our Center of Excellence Security, which allows us to configure what groups can see certain types of cases and what groups can't. So it's just a way for us to configure an access control list just through a simple user interface. For notification, we have a plethora of standard out-of-box notifications for all of our Center of Excellence tables. You can activate and configure advanced notification layouts for more engaging notifications. So a lot of customers will brand their notifications specific to their company, make them more interactive where I can click on links to view my request. So it's really up for configuration. We could translate our notifications. It's certainly an important part of HR service delivery to be able to notify somebody when a case has been created on their behalf, when they're assigned a case, when a case has been closed. So every step of the way, including our ad hoc notifications. I just want to reach out to the individual to understand or get additional information on the case. Notifications can be opted out by employees through configurations. Some things to be mindful of is not to overwhelm an employee by creating too many notifications. We see a lot in the field where employees will create a special email box and anything from applications will be sent to that email box to not muddy their inbox, and then they go unnoticed. So we don't want to influence somebody to disregard any notifications because we're flooding them with too many. So just be mindful on, notifying in moderation, but notifying to be effective. And then dashboards and reports, it goes without saying, we have a plethora of reports that we provide out of box, and any of these can be modified to make your own. So in the image at the top, we have active HR cases. I may want to use that same report, copy it to new, and have it be all of our closed HR cases within the past week. So you could use what's there for your use cases or expand your use cases. So with that, I'll pass it back to Ru to talk about HR knowledge management.
And thanks, Michael. I appreciate that. I am going to go through HR knowledge management fairly quickly. We'll make sure I'm cognizant of the time, and Michael has some demo things he wants to just point out to you actually in an instance of the platform. So let me get going here. So ServiceNow knowledge management, yeah. So some of the things to consider are structure. How are you capturing that information? How are you tracking use of it? How are you improving it? How are you managing it over the long term? Um, I'm going to give you a few sort of leading practice recommendations here. Structure, always a good idea to have a fairly consistent structure, look and feel, similar information across all of your knowledge articles, so employees know where to find sort of the core information and what's always going to be maybe a core part of every knowledge article, and keep it simple. It really just needs to answer the questions that employees are asking in the most efficient way possible. Very few people need a lot of detail to simply complete a task. So you have to kind of consider the task, but the simpler you can make it, the better off it is, and the more consistent and structured, the better off. Capturing, always look for opportunities to capture information out of HR cases. Look for opportunities to capture information out of other repositories, maybe SharePoint or another system where you have information that really needs to be available through an employee portal and through the knowledge base. Track usage. If no one is reading an article, maybe that article can be retired, or maybe pieces of it can be added into an article where employees are really spending their time. Always look for opportunities to improve. Definitely use the feedback mechanisms that are available, and check to see what you can do. Are links broken? Is information incomplete? Are there questions that employees have that aren't being answered? And then definitely don't let articles go on for months and months or years and years without being updated. You want to make sure that that information is current, so employees always have the latest and greatest. So yeah, configuration considerations, knowledge bases. Do you have one? Do you have many? With HR criteria and some of the targeting capabilities we have, I always like to have maybe one knowledge base for IT and one knowledge base for HR and one knowledge base for CSM and so on. I don't really like having a knowledge base for HR employees and a knowledge base for HR agents myself. I feel like that information can be done using targeting, using knowledge articles, and using our knowledge block functionality, where you could actually target knowledge blocks to have like information for agents in the same article with information for employees, but only the agents are going to see what's specific to them. So just a consideration there. Again, having some consistent templates is always helpful. Having publish and retire workflows. You can either instant publish or you can have articles go through a review process. Think about how you want to manage that. Categories and connected content. Especially when you're working with an employee portal like Employee Center, you definitely want to consider your taxonomy and how you're organizing articles. So are you organizing under benefits, and then medical and dental and retirement, and then payroll and taxes and invoices so think about kind of how you're structuring. A tree structure is often a typical way of doing it, but make sure that it maps, and make sure it maps to the way employees are also thinking about the content, not just an HR-centric view of content. I know I had a team that managed employees transferring from one country to another. They called it mobility. Employees had no idea what mobility meant, so we actually had to say, job transfers and use other taxonomies to make it clear to employees. Set up your security and roles. You can set up security around knowledge as well. You definitely want to do that. You want to have admins, you want to have contributors, and you want to have obviously readers with your employee base. And then you want to target those readers maybe based on their region or their role. You can set up notifications, especially for your content authors, to make sure they know when content is expiring. And then you can also create reports and dashboards around content. So definitely do that. Consider that as a way to make sure that you're proactively managing your content. Um, it says may add later knowledge blocks. I believe knowledge blocks are especially when you're in a more complex organization, knowledge blocks are kind of core for me. I don't know if I've set up a knowledge base in the last 5 years without knowledge blocks. So definitely consider that. It's a great way of targeting information either to roles like agents or managers, as well as employees, and then only managers can see what's targeted to them. Or to target information across regions. So employees in Germany and employees in America and employees in Japan are all seeing what applies to them. But those knowledge blocks can be targeted in that way. Translation, again, depends on your workforce and the needs of your workforce, but definitely translation management should be one of your considerations. And then knowledge management training and process guidance, depending on how you've structured your knowledge and the creation of and maintenance of your knowledge, that may or may not be an add later. It may be a do now, but definitely a consideration on how you're going to manage your content. We'll talk about that a little bit more here momentarily. Um, Knowledge content architecture. Yeah, knowledge bases, you may have multiple knowledge bases, you may have one. I tend to like to keep them as consolidated as possible, just to make the management and governance easier. And then you also should consider how does the knowledge management and the taxonomy that I've applied in knowledge map to the taxonomy in an employee portal like Employee Center, making sure again that there's a clear mapping between those. So it's easier to know when an employee is in the employee portal and they click on a link in the mega menu, as we call it, what information is going to surface for them. We'll talk a little bit about more resources for knowledge management as I kind of go through this very quickly. 3 different approaches: centralized, decentralized, or distributed and hybrid. This is kind of how you would manage knowledge. Centralized means you have a core team of authors, writers, maybe tech editors, working with subject matter experts to create all the knowledge that's available in your knowledge base. Distributed means the subject matter experts themselves are creating the content. In that case, you're definitely going to want to have a lot of training available so that they're doing the right thing. And you may want to have a review process to make sure that things like language, voice, formatting are all consistent between your knowledge articles. A hybrid would be you may have some subject matter experts who are creating content, but you also have maybe editors are reviewing it to make sure that it meets your standards. So just a way to organize the creation and management of knowledge. Key considerations, obviously your governance. Do you have publishing and retirement workflows? Are you using versioning? Do you have standardized templates? Are you reporting against your articles to know which ones are most effective, which ones are not, which ones are being read, which ones are not? Taxonomy, you definitely want to have your taxonomy figured out and make sure it aligns to other taxonomies that you may be using or exposing to employees, such as Employee Center again. And then maintenance. I'm a big fan of the valid to date, which is part of the knowledge base setup and configuration, because that way you can say, hey, every year we're going to force a review of this article to make sure that it's current, up to date, and providing the right information to employees. So with that, I'm handing back to Michael for a quick demo of just navigating around some of the features.
Thanks again, Rue. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through some of the items we talked about earlier, just so I could show you what those look like. So what we're going to start off are the HR profiles. So this is an HR profile for one of the users within my instance. And here we have, a lot of the attributes that we could key in on for delivering that experience, like, return to workplace. Maybe they're out for maternity leave. Country of birth, place of birth, date of birth, some of the different attributes. One that I just want to key in on, because I mentioned earlier about the client role and auto assigning. So this particular person, Bess Marceau, may be leaving the company, and by way of automation, we're getting, their end date within our integration. And I'm going to say it's in the past. It was on Monday. And if you notice, when I save this record, I've given her now a client role of alumni. So it took away the employee role and now given her alumni. So based on our processes, if we're using the Alumni Service Center, now Bess Marceau is in a good position to start consuming those services. So just some of the importance from the HR profile in order to achieve the experience or the functionality that you're looking for. The next item I'm gonna demonstrate are the HR services. So we have our HR service configuration, and I'll just pull up one randomly just to give some examples of some of the things that we have to configure. So within our HR service, we have the ability to show a badge. And when it's being worked by HR in the portal, we want to show a badge for HR. We have the ability to select a fulfillment type. Is this just a one and done, a case, no service activities, no task? It's just we work the case and it's done? Or is it a service activity where now I can create service activity tasks in order to build a process? So service activities, just think of them as child tasks, if you will, and I could build those in a sequence that I would want those to be worked on. So again, just a little more flexibility of what we have in our HR service. We have a topic detail and topic category, which result to our center of excellence. So for all intents and purposes, that's our categorization structure. Moving on to some of the other features, we have the ability to show the case to the subject person. So it may be something like a performance review that we don't want to show to the subject person. Or in this case, it may be a retirement plan that we do want to show to the subject person when the case is created. And then we have our HR template, which allow us to pre-populate things like priority, assignment group, as well as the record producer. So the record producer is what's going to allow it to be visible on the catalog. If I would take out this value for record producer and save this record, I would not have a catalog item within my HR catalog to request this. It would just be done from an agent fulfillment perspective. And then I mentioned about case options, just ways we can automate some processes where I can automatically add the manager to the watch list. I could not default the subject person. I can skip the auto assign, or I could skip the user acceptance state. So previously we had a lot of customers that were customizing to not present a waiting acceptance state and go straight to close when the agent was done. So just some of the functionalities that we have within the HR service in order to deliver the experience. The last thing is I'll talk about are the open for and subject person view. So we could have a different view of that case based on what role I have on the HR case. If I'm the open for or approver, I could view certain fields. If I'm the subject person or task assignee, I could view different fields if so configured. And then lastly, on the HR services, we have the ability to pull in additional fields by configuration. So on the case, I want to show the benefit plan, and I don't want to show a retirement benefits for the subject person related list. So I just do that by configuration. If I remove these, that related list is not going to show up on the case. If I remove the benefit plan, that benefit plan field is not going to show on the case. So it's just a way that we could use the HR service configuration to align with our processes. I had mentioned earlier about the template where we can automate, some of the things that we're doing with our HR service. And I'm going to switch to the new UI. So our case template just allows us to specify information, give a short description, select a priority. We could specify the assignment type. I could also add additional fields. So maybe I want to see the department, within are automatically set up. Probably not a good use case for a template, but just an example to show you that you can add additional fields on that case template to help repopulate information into the case. The case form, and I'm gonna go to a workspace and just open one of my cases to show you just what that looks like. So again, I'm pulling up the HR agent workspace, which is a typical interface for our agents. And then within that case form, you can see I have additional fields. I could pull these in through configuration of the views, and I have the information that's needed. So this is the workspace view of the HR case with all of my necessary fields within the details. I have other things related to the case based on the HR service, maybe emergency contacts, any documents, any interactions for the subject person. So that's just a view of the HR case form. And then lastly, for the HR case is I'm going to show you the security configurations. So what this is a configuration to where I can restrict cases based on a configuration. So for all intents and purposes, I can restrict the payroll cases and all of the HR services to a payroll group. So if you're not a member of the payroll group, you would never see this case. And I can configure this. So what this does is uses the access control list as a variable to look at this restriction and allow a read or a write on those type of cases that I've configured for. And I could build conditions. So if it's maybe a certain region, when the region is in one place, I don't want them to be able to see it from another region. So we could build conditions in order to facilitate our use case. And just being cognizant of time, I'm going to jump over to our knowledge base and just want to show you what those knowledge articles look like and some things to consider. So I'm just pulling up a knowledge base article. And in my instance, I have versioning enabled. So if I wanted to modify this article, I have to check it out. And then I could modify the article. And once I republish it, it's going to increment the version. So within knowledge articles, I have the ability to specify who can see it. I could run user criteria diagnostics. It's typical that we're using user criteria so we could dictate who is seeing what knowledge articles based on any of those attributes that we're using for user criteria. And the last thing I'll mention with knowledge articles is we have a concept of taxonomy within our Employee Center Pro, where we're connecting content within those taxonomies. We can automatically connect a knowledge category to a taxonomy within our Employee Center Pro. So probably a little more technical details, but that's where we can leverage that category to do more than just specifying it within the knowledge article. We can help it get injected into the taxonomy for our Employee Center Pro. So those are the things I wanted to show with the demo. So I'll pause here. Are there any questions we want to answer, or I'll pass it back on to you, Rue?
Hey, Michael, I just think one quick thing I want to follow up on that taxonomy and the alignment of the taxonomy. There is information on our ServiceNow community under the Employee Center Product Hub and the drop down of product hubs. There is information specific to the taxonomies. There's a session, a webinar about that. There's other information available on the taxonomy. So as Michael was just saying, you can align your knowledge base taxonomy with the taxonomy on your employee portal, and information about that is available, again, on the community. That was a question that had come in. So let me, so I know we're at time, we're actually a little bit over. For those of you who can stay, about 5 more minutes and we'll wrap up. For those of you who have to go, this will be posted and you can watch the end of this session. I'm just going to talk about some resources and some upcoming events going forward here in the next few minutes. So with that, I just wanted to make a couple quick points. Definitely, we want you to use out of the box capabilities whenever you can to realize the quickest wins. Obviously, you have to take that into consideration with everything else you've got going on, but oftentimes the simplest solution is the best and the fastest, and you can always add more complexity later. So if you realize that a requirement is truly a requirement, you can start doing some other things, but there's a lot of configuration capability as Michael was showing. Which will allow you to address sort of those easy cases as well as some of those sort of more middle tier cases that you have. Again, use the HR services capability, but focus on the HR services and the knowledge information that aligns to the volumes of cases that you're getting. So if you get a lot of questions about payroll, then make sure your payroll articles are in there and that your payroll HR services are in there. If it's benefits, then go benefits. If it's something else, then choose something else. But address those first, and that will start driving down your case volumes. And then lastly, use your reporting on an ongoing basis. That will tell you sort of what that next opportunity is for you to make a better employee experience or to make your HR service programs more efficient. So with that, I'm going to move to some implementation resources. These will be put into the chat, but there is a customer success center. We have Now Create, and then there's a number of, as I said earlier in this meeting, a number of HR service delivery webinars and meetups scheduled for the near future, and we're always looking at what's next and what questions are being asked and what services or information we can provide to our customers through these webinars. HR Service Delivery has a product hub as well out on the community, community.servicenow.com. And then knowledge management has a product hub as well. So if you have more questions about knowledge management, there's a lot of great resources available on that product hub. I use it. I'm kind of a nerd that way. I love knowledge. And then case and knowledge management, the what, why, and how of deployment is scheduled for August 8th. So if you can attend that session, you'll get a little more hands-on into doing some more configuration in case and knowledge management. And then lastly, I believe realize value with resources. We do have our ServiceNow Impact program. If you've signed up for that, hopefully you're getting a lot of good resources and good information there. There are trainings and certifications available on our Now Learning site. And then our expert services is a group of folks who can come in and help you do your configurations and make sure everything is working optimally. I definitely recommend them, especially if you're not using a partner to support you, and you just need that extra bit of insider knowledge to help make sure your configurations are really set up and tight and making you as efficient as you can be. So definitely those are resources that are available. And with that, I think we're kind of out of time for questions. We've answered a number of those questions in the Q&A panel. If you have questions after this, please feel free to reach out and we'll get them. Or you can put your questions in the community site under the HRSD product hub. There is a capability at the bottom of that product hub page to ask questions, and we're always monitoring and trying to answer those questions for you as quickly as possible. With that, I want to say thank you. Appreciate your time today, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye, everyone.